Joining us now for the World Brief and a review of headlines of today's newspaper around the world is Adefemi Akisoya. Great to have you, Femi. Morning.
Morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning.
And welcome, Invite.
Good morning, Adefem. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Hope you're all doing well.
Yes.
Wishing you the same too, viewers. Good morning. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Emirates Airline, they've announced that it will resume its Dubai-Lagos service today, March 6th. That's according to a notice sent out to travel agents. Now, the move does come as airlines begin cautiously restoring operations in the Gulf after days of disruption triggered by the escalating US-Iran war, which forced widespread airspace closures across the region. Now, Emirates says flights will restart as part of a gradual return to operations, reconnecting Nigeria with Dubai, which is, of course, one of the world's busiest international aviation hubs. So passengers are being advised to check flights schedules closely as conditions in the region remain fluid. That being said, Emirates will resume its flights from Lagos to Dubai and Dubai to Lagos today, March 6th. Now, moving on, the war between the United States and Israel and Iran is widening, with Iran-backed militias in Iraq launching new attacks on American and Israeli interests across the region. Explosions and drone strikes have been reported near U.S. military bases in Iraq, while Iraqi forces say they intercepted a drone targeting a base close to Baghdad International Airport. What you're actually seeing on your screens behind me is a U.S. strike on a drone carrier towards Iran. And this is, of course, happening as Iran continues missile barrages against Israel, sending millions of Israelis into bomb shelters, while Israeli forces launch new strikes on Tehran itself and Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Bahrain has confirmed that an Iranian missile struck a state-run oil refinery, marking yet another significant escalation in the widening regional global conflict. And it also underscores fresh threats to the Gulf's critical energy infrastructure. Now, the conflict now entering its second week. Today is day 7. Of course, tomorrow will be the week mark, but today is day 7 of fighting. It has drawn in militias and proxy forces across the Middle East, as we've been seeing over the course of this week, and that raised fears that the war could expand into a wider regional confrontation. Now, heading back to the United States, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has been removed from her role following mounting criticism over her handling of border security and immigration policy in the United States. Noem, who is the former governor of South Dakota, had overseen key elements of the administration's hardline border strategy, which include migrant detention and deportation policy. Now, her tenure drew both praise from Republican allies and sharp criticism from Democrats and immigration advocates. Now, the administration says Oklahoma Senator, his name is Mark Wayne Mullen, will be the new Homeland Security Secretary, while efforts continue to tighten border enforcement. We are still staying with the U.S. administration, but this time for a slightly lighter story. U.S. President Donald Trump did welcome Lionel Messi and his Inter Miami teammates to the White House for them to celebrate their MLS Cup triumph. Now, Trump admitted that he did not know Messi would be attending until his son told him, before raising the Argentinian superstar, praising him, and also mentioning Cristiano Ronaldo and other players. Now, recalling the days he watched Pelé play for the New York Cosmos, Trump did spark a fresh GOAT or greatest of all time debate by suggesting Messi might even be better than the Brazilian icon. Now, the remarks quickly reignited the global football discussion over who truly deserves the title of the greatest player of all time. Let's take a quick listen.
Welcome to the White House, Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi is, my son said, "Dad, you know who's going to be there today?" And I said, "No, I got a lot of things going on." He said, "Messi." I said, "Really?" He's a big fan. He's a big fan of yours. And a gentleman named Ronaldo. We have Cristiano is great. You're great to play. I shouldn't say this because you'll say I'm old, but I watched Pelé play. He played for the Cosmos. You know that? Better than Pelé. Pelé was pretty good. Who's better, him or Pelé?
Messi.
Definitely old if you've seen Pele play in person. Definitely a little bit old. And, there was a lot of conversation about perhaps Trump even himself being referred to as the GOAT when he had welcomed Cristiano Ronaldo a few months ago. The White House had released a tweet asking whether or not, essentially saying that there were two GOATs in the same place. So we'll see what happens there. We are staying with football and geopolitics now, as the Confederation of African Football has postponed the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations just days before the tournament was supposed to begin. Now, CAF, which is the Confederation of African Football, says that the competition originally was scheduled for the 17th of March and it would run until the 3rd of April. But now it will take place in Morocco still, but this time from the 25th of July until August 16th. And what they are citing is what they call unforeseen circumstances. Now, this delay does follow weeks of uncertainty over the tournament, especially since the start of this US-Iran war. This year's WAFCON will feature 16 teams for the first time, with Nigeria, who is, of course, the defending champions. They will also be in the mix. The competition is also going to serve as a qualifier for the 2027 Women's World Cup in Brazil, where 4 African nations will secure automatic spots. So for the football fans, we're going to have to wait a little later for WAFCON again. Alrighty, let's take a look at our newspaper headlines from across the world. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day, the newspaper of record. And This Day does lead with reports that President Tinubu has overseen the resolution of that 15-year OPL 245-245 dispute between the federal government, ENI, and Nigeria Exploration Limited. So this is now going to pave the way, it's hoped, for deep water investment. And the Zabazaba Dam project expected to add some 150,000 barrels per day to Nigeria's oil production. In addition to that, This Day is also reporting that Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu says that Lagos is a key driver of Africa's urban transformation. He was highlighting the state's rapid growth, expanding tech ecosystem and infrastructure projects. And this is why he was speaking at Harvard Kennedy School earlier on in the week. Let's take a look at the Daily Independent this morning. The Daily Independent is reporting that FEC, the Federal Executive Council, has approved a new exit benefit scheme, granting retiring federal workers, federal civil servants, a payment equivalent to 100% of their total annual salary, effective the 1st of January 2026, to strengthen retirement welfare alongside the contributory pension scheme. So that's some good news coming out from there. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph this morning. And the New Telegraph is reporting that the Senate has directed the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, the NNPCL, to refund 210 trillion naira over alleged financial irregularities between 2017 and 2023. In doing so, they've actually also summoned the former GCEO Mele Kyari and other officials to explain the discrepancies. We've got the Daily Trust up next, and the Daily Trust is reporting that suspected Boko Haram terrorists, Islamic State, ISWAP terrorists have abducted over 100 women and children and killed soldiers. This is also including the chief imam and community elders during an attack on Ngoshe community in Borno State. The Daily Sun also takes a look at what is happening in Anambra State, this time as the government there says that it has regained several oil wells previously attributed to Delta State after verification by the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission. So this is a move expected to increase Anambra State's oil derivation revenue. We will see. Then we've got the Punch. The Punch is also dabbling in with oil. So we've got the Dangote Petroleum refinery increasing petrol prices to 874 naira per litre. This is due to rising global crude costs from the US-Iran conflict, even though imported petrol is about 64 naira cheaper. Now, the refinery did cite limited domestic crude supply and reliance on foreign sources, but helped prevent fuel shortages in the country. Let's move on now to our next paper. We've got the Times of the United Kingdom, and the Times is looking at, of course, this issue between the United States and Iran. So you've got Donald Trump insisting on having a say in the selection of Iran's new leader, and that is, of course, after Ali Khamenei, the former Ayatollah, was killed by US-Israeli strikes. And then we have the Metro, which is looking at the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer essentially vowing to build a shield over the British people after announcing that 4 additional Typhoon jets will be sent to Qatar. So this is the Starmer Obama kind of strengthening his own sit. You know, yesterday we were talking about how there had been some criticism coming his way about how he had been weak and not really doing enough to protect the British people. And we see this move. So these are your newspaper headlines and your world brief. Love to hear your thoughts.
So, real quick thing. That's the first story. Yes, the war is continuing at the time. Huh?
Emirates flights resume.
No. I'm talking about the war in Israel. I think that there was a second story as regards the war. Yes. Emirates continuing. I mean, that's a good sign. I mean, things are petering out. But there's also a very huge bill for people that are leaving the Middle East. In fact, in some estimation, it could go up to thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to leave. You've got some Americans left the Middle East already. I think a couple of them, hundreds of thousands of them. But what I was saying as regards the war, finally, a report by an American daily has finally done their calculation, and they revealed that the missile that struck the girls' school in Iran was actually from the Americans.
Not the Israelis.
Not the Israelis. It was actually from the Americans. So it goes further to the narrative where America was, okay, we're going to investigate and all of that, but they did it. The question is, are they going to take accountability for it? And the war has blown out of proportion. So the problem they're having now in the war is the fact that they're trying to call in the Ukrainians to come and teach them how to deal with the Shah drones, because they're shooting all their missile defense system, missiles worth about millions of dollars, to shoot down the drone that is just about $20,000 or $30,000, and it's a big problem for them. And most of their stockpile for their defenses is already running out, and that's why you're seeing increasingly Iran is making more incursions, into Kuwait, into Iran, into Iraq, Bahrain, and places like that. So it's a big problem for them. They're exhausting all their arsenal to be able to deal with them. At the same time, CNN broke the story a couple of days ago as regards the possibility now of they're trying to talk to about 5 Kurdistan parties, because Iran has a long-held rivalry and kerfuffle with Kurdistan. So they're trying to see if they can bring them in as ground troops to now start the fight, because you cannot do a regime change from the air. You have to do it from within. So they're trying to see if they can bring that into the borders. Iran is actually bombing those Kurdish positions, but they're trying to see if they can bring them in, they can fight. But Argachi was saying the other day that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and there's also the Iranian Revolutionary Guards militia, which you have about 1 million of them armed, are definitely going to nip that in the bud and fight that threat. So that is going on. As regards Kristi, no, goodness me, finally she's out. But I don't think it's because of her role at ICE. I think what really happened was this over 300 million she was trying to retrofit luxury jets and the likes.
Oh, okay, I thought you meant the ad campaign.
No, it's not even the ad campaign. It's the luxury jet issue. Because if you remember Trump's first term, he hates things like that. I think one of his cabinet members did, fly a luxury jet. In fact, even returned the money. But Trump went ahead to still sack that cabinet member. That was during Trump 1.0. So I think that really irked Trump. And he felt, I can't stand this and all of that. But by the way, at least, you're seeing the ad campaigns. I mean, I watch MSNBC. Those ads are even running on MSNBC. At some point, I'm running on Fox, like I watch. So, I mean, apart from that, I think it's really that luxury jet thing, and he just had enough of it.
Well, let me start back home here. I think the headline story, probably Punch or Vanguard, where it talks about the voluntary retirement of DIG Frank Mba. Recall that when Mr. Olatunji Disu was promoted from AIG to being IG of Police, there were conversations around some of those who are his seniors, Deputy Inspector Generals of Police, whether or not they would remain or decide to move on. Well, he's moved on after 34 years meritorious service to Nigerian people. He's talked about his experience working. He was a fine gentleman policeman who gained a lot of public favor, especially because of his brilliance. He retired as the DIG in charge of training and development. He'd served in many areas, investigations, and just to give him that accolade alongside those who have chosen to voluntarily retire at this time. The Police Service Council is currently interviewing 7 people to fill the position of DIG, so AIGs to fill the positions of DIG. So just to again go back, because just to conclude that conversation we're having when Mr. Tunji Disu was promoted from AIG to IG, and the fact that there were certain DIGs that some people had said might have emerged as IG of Police. Now, moving away from that, going to Emirates. Good news there, because of course we talked about the billions of dollars that was lost daily by the Dubai airspace being closed, especially as in that area, tourism is one of the lifebloods of the economy. And so it's still skeletal, 100 flights a day. They're still asking passengers that if you haven't received information from your airline, do not proceed to the airport to fly. Some people have tried to find alternative means of going out. And let's not forget Trump's statement around the fact that Americans should get out of the Middle East. So a number of people will be looking for ways to, evacuate, to get out of the Middle East at this time. But this is a good signal. Despite the attacks by Iran on, Dubai, the airport, some hotels in Dubai, it's great to see them at least trying to make a comeback after that. And finally, when it comes to asymmetric wars, in terms of, shall I say, weighing down or the superpower, Iran to America, superpower versus a power that cannot match up. What they would be hopeful for is that some of the attacks on these regional bodies, and some of them have begun to, there's some discontent amongst them, would weary America alongside, of course, the American people themselves, many of whom have said that is there a justification for this war in terms of the, with regards to the amount of money being spent and the justification for it in its entirety.
Thank you, Ayo.
All right, let me quickly begin with Donald Trump. 97 days to go until the first whistle will be blown for the World Cup. I'm not surprised that he's on a major charm offensive given all that's happening around the world right now. He's going to need to put his best foot forward to try and sanitize the World Cup and get buy-in from people. You already have the potential of an Iranian team not participating. Yesterday, I saw an advert from the U.S. Embassy in Ghana where they were actually advertising visa appointment slots. And we know notoriously how difficult it is to get a visa appointment, but now nobody is coming to apply for the visas. So it will be quite intriguing to see how in the next 97 days, the United States will be able to create some good PR that will get people interested in coming to the World Cup and, potentially, get people to even be able to access the visas. But one thing that the war in Iran has done, I think it has unveiled sort of a new global order when it comes to how war is done. It's interesting for me that one of the few instances where regime change has been achieved from the skies was in Yugoslavia when the NATO air bombing campaign led to the ousting of Slobodan Milosevic during that era. But apart from that, generally, we haven't seen it being successful. We've also seen Donald Trump admit to the fact that all the guys he would have wanted are dead, meaning that the people he thought were worse are actually more moderate to those that are left behind in the theocracy or the theocratic republic that is Iran. So how will that play out? Now, the other thing as well is what's playing out in the media continues to play out is sort of, the balance between the force. And it was interesting for me. I dove into a report from ACLED where they've basically done an analysis of all the attacks so far. So they say Iran has launched 263 retaliatory strikes so far across 14 countries. 142 were successful and 121 were intercepted. Meanwhile, US and Israel have launched 398 strikes on Iran since 28th of February. So it's interesting to see that. I would have thought that the gap would have been a lot bigger than that. But one of the key things for me is the fact that one of those sent out of Iran hit Turkey. Turkey being a member of NATO, we were waiting to see a response from the NATO nations. Silence. EU is currently trying to see how they can negotiate to get Russian oil because of all the oil stuck at the Strait of Hormuz. If this were World War II, the alliances, if you remember during that period, was so strong. The bonds were so strong that if you attack my friend, you're my enemy. But we're seeing a new world order where the enemy of my enemy may not necessarily be my enemy. A lot of introspection and sort of self-interest leading the day. And I think that's possibly what will ensure that this war won't be too prolonged, is the fact that people have said, oh boy, I day my day. I day my day. All right. Thank you so much, Adefemi Akinsanya, for that fantastic World Brief and newspaper review.